So, someone's listening to you and saying, boy, you know, I need to hear this. I'm living my life more dominated by my flesh than anything. I need this resurrection. How does one achieve that? I mean, is it something that just sort of happens to you? Is it something you intentionally pursue? How does one go through the process?
Yes. When I'm talking about resurrection, resurrection is when the very last enemy was defeated. When we're living in the power of resurrection, we no longer are dragging around that dead weight. So as we begin to identify, oh, this is what I used to call a natural reaction. This is what I used to call, that's just my personality. Now I recognize that it's just flesh and it's getting me nowhere. I'm going to alter it. In this moment, instead of responding out of that flesh, that anger, that envy, that I don't feel as good as everybody else, whatever flavor your flesh takes, I'm going to instead respond out of the Spirit. And little by little, when that flesh stays on the altar, one day it's going to be gone. So that thing out here, that kind of incident or that kind of personality that used to engage that flesh, that thing can still happen, and it won't even show up on my radar screen. It no longer has control of me. Now I'm living in the power of resurrection.
Moira referred to Romans 12, verse 1 a few minutes ago. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, you present your bodies a living sacrifice. And one old theologian said the problem with the living sacrifice, it keeps crawling off the altar, you know. But there is a day-to-day factor here, is there not? I mean, it's not like a once, I can't, I'm going to put this on the altar and now I forget it.
Right.
It has a way of raising its head.
Absolutely. It's not a one-time thing. And in the book I talk about flesh patterns. Our flesh has a pattern to it. Yours may not have the same pattern that mine does. But once you identify that, and your flesh is not going to just go quietly. It's going to be saying, come on, one more time, I've served you well in the past. So you keep it altered. It's there, you know it's there, but instead of saying that's me, you say that's my flesh. And some flesh has to stay on that altar for years and decades. But one day, the thing happens, no flesh is engaged, you're in the resurrection.
You know, when I was reading your book, I thought of the movie Mission. Have you seen Mission?
I have not.
Oh, you got to see it. Robert De Niro plays a character there.
Oh, I have.
You know, and he's climbing this waterfall. He's got this rope with this huge bag of stuff, you know, and it's this huge burden. And there comes a point in the movie, he's been dragging around this thing, you know, for days, where someone cuts the rope and it falls away, and suddenly he's free. This such biblical imagery there. But I want to shift gears. How has this altered concept worked in your life personally? I mean, you're a terrific expositor. You write very, very effectively. I love the fact that you support your thoughts biblically, and you give the references, which is always a good thing. But, you know, what about Jennifer herself? How has this worked out, and how is it working out with you?
In my flesh pattern, I'm a very defensive person, easily offended. And so before I married my sweet husband, Wayne Dean, everyone around me had learned to be careful about offending me. But then the Lord married me to a person who thought the best thing he could do for me was to fix me. And so overly defensive person married to overly critical man. Now, my tendency would be to say to God, change him so he doesn't offend me and hurt my feelings so much. And that's when the Lord began to say, don't worry about him. Why are your feelings so easily hurt? Where does that defensiveness come from? And so over the years of just saying, this defensiveness feels so natural to me. It feels like it's the right response, but I'm not going to act out of it anymore. So now, all these years later, I am a person who you can hardly offend me. You will have to try really hard to offend me. And so that's a freer way to live. See, in the beginning, I wanted God to fix everything around me so nobody engaged that defensive flesh. And then the Lord said, I'm not going to fix everybody around you. I'm going to fix you. And the reason that these particular things and personality types are around you is so your flesh will be exposed.
Now, your husband died.
Yes, he did.
What, 4 or 5 years ago?
6 years ago.
6 years ago. How have you changed now that you're a widow from when you were married? Have you gone back to a former, you were single before you were married. Are you similar now to when you were there, or have you changed?
No, because once you start living in the resurrection, it's a total change. It's not just a fix it up for the moment. That defensiveness in me no longer lives. Christ lives there instead.
How much of this is maturity?
Yeah, years.
You
yes.
know, I mean, maturation.
Yes.
Like as a pastor, I've known people in their 70s and 80s who are immature.
Yes, exactly.
And so, whether it's defensiveness or other kinds of counterproductive behaviors, it just simply is rooted in the fact they never grew up.
Yes, exactly. And here's what I think. When God began to help me identify this process, it helped me cooperate with Him in what He's doing so that I could mature. Because I think that what we do until we recognize that process is we're always trying to fix the other person. And the other person or the event that might have engaged that flesh, it might indeed be 100% wrong, but that's not your problem. Your problem is that it has identified flesh that's there to be engaged.
What's next for you? Are you writing something new?
My next book that will be out is The Life-Changing Power in the Name of Jesus. It's out right now in a Bible study form, but it'll be out in a trade book form. And then shortly after that, 365 I think it's called the one-year devotional, Praying God's Promises.
Do you spend most of your time writing?
I spend an awfully lot of my time writing, either on the computer or in my head.
And is this something you'd always thought you might do?
I've just always been a communicator, and here's what I always explain. I write books for me, and then if you want to read them, good for you.
Well, this one's called Altered, A-L-T-A-R''D. Let's put it up on the screen one more time. And it's available, friends, at Crossroads E-Store. And if you want to access the book, just log on to crossroads.ca or call 1-800-265-3100, and you can order your book, and the price is always fair, and it can make a real difference. And it's laid out, this book, in a sort of 40 segments, right?
Yes.
So for 40 days or maybe whatever.
However you want to do it.
However you want to do it. You'll find it very, very interesting. And if you've enjoyed this interview and see this woman as a terrific communicator and expositor, that's exactly what she is in the book. Thanks for coming our way.
My pleasure.
We'll be back with more right after this, friends.